Now, where I left off was with Carlo Gambino. Let me give you a brief synopsis of his life again. He joined the Mafia at the age of 19, became a full-fledged member of the Mafia at age 19, was performing hits for the Mafia in his teens, worked his way up the ranks of the Mafia, and became boss and godfather of the Mafia. Worked his way up to the top position, became the godfather of the Gambino crime family. In fact, that's where the name Gambino crime family comes from. It can be traced back to Carlo Gambino and has its roots in Carlo Gambino. Carlo Gambino spent 55 years of his life in the Mafia. He spent approximately 20 of those 55 years as a godfather of the Gambino crime family. It is well known that Carlo Gambino was one of the most treacherous and feared of all Mafia bosses. This is a guy that did not play with kid gloves, in spite of his grandfatherly looks. He looked like a nice, small, grandfatherly type guy, and his looks were very deceiving, because he was a very stern, strict, and treacherous leader of the Gambino family. The Gambino family was very, very successful under his wing because he ruled it so sternly. Well, anyway, given Carlo Gambino's past, treacherous past, murders, performing hits since he was a teenager, looking at Carlo Gambino through the perspective of karma, we should expect to see a lot of bad karma, a lot of bad results and bad effects coming back to Carlo Gambino, given his lifelong vocation in crime and in the Mafia. However, what are the facts about Carlo Gambino's life? Well, the facts are Carlo Gambino never spent any time in prison. Carlo Gambino lived to a ripe old age. Carlo Gambino died peacefully at home of natural causes. And now I submit to you that empirically, and we're looking at karma from the empirical standpoint, empirically, that is a counterexample. Carlo Gambino's life is a counterexample, and thus effectively and empirically disproves karma. Carlo Gambino basically had no bad effects or bad results on his life, very minimal, if any, in spite of his 55 years in the Mafia. And you see, I won't even dignify karma by referring to it as a law of the universe or even a theory, because it's neither. It's a figment of some people's imaginations. And basically where karma came from is from some people's imaginations many millennia ago, when the originators of the Eastern religions were writing the religious texts. They came up with the concept of karma. It's very obvious that they came up with it, and as I said before, it basically appeals to man's sense of fair play. You want to feel as if you do something, somebody does something wrong, then something bad is going to come back to them, but that's just not the way it is. I mean, even back when the writers of the original Eastern texts Eastern religious texts were coming up with the concept of karma. they didn't have any other writings to go by. There's no Ten Commandments or Moses or anyone else. But still, regardless of what society or what epoch you live in, there are some things that are just generally known to be wrong. For instance, I know of no society or no group of people who has ever held up stealing as a virtue. Stealing is wrong. And man's sense of fair play mandates that he would like to see a thief held accountable, whether it's today or 2,000 years ago when these writings and meanderings were being put down. And so this concept of karma came up. It was incorporated into the religious texts. And by doing that, that basically solved a lot of injustices in a person's mind who wants to believe it, because you can think, well, down the road they're going to get some bad karma back on themselves. Well, I'm sorry to say, but that's not the case. And you believing it doesn't make it so. You can believe it if you want it, if it helps you traverse through this thing called life. It helps you traverse through it a little easier. You can believe it, but it's not so. It's something that you're never going to be able to prove. In fact, something that can be disproven, as I've shown. It can be disproven quite easily using the empirical method. How many times have we heard the rhetorical question asked, why do bad things happen to good people? We see that all the time. And vice versa, good things happen to bad people. It's basically luck of the draw, roll of the dice. And there are some people who commit crimes and get away with them, some people who commit crimes and get caught. The police aren't successful 100% of the time in solving all crimes. Nothing is perfect in this world. No one is perfect in this world. And there are going to be imperfect things that happen as a result of living in an imperfect world. It has nothing to do with good karma and bad karma. Well, something bad happens to someone, well, they must have done something before to deserve that. That's some bad karma coming back on them. Well, that's foolishness. I prefer to look at life logically, philosophically, logically, with a clear head, a sound mind, my eyes wide open. I prefer to not believe in things just for the sake of believing in them, just because it might make me feel better or appeal to my sense of fair play. I have to be realistic in my assessment of the world. And I would appeal to those of you watching this to be realistic in your assessment of the world and of the actions around you. But let me just say that the subject of science, some of you are probably asking yourself, well, how does Mr. Solomon know about this empirical method? How does he know enough to use it as an example? Where exactly is Greg Solomon coming from? Is he a scientist? Why is he using the empirical example? Well, because it's a logical thing to use the empirical example. It's something that is used to prove and disprove a premise. And in this example, it has disproven this premise. Why am I using it? Because I've said before, there are several subjects of which I'm quite knowledgeable of. And yes, science is one of those subjects that I am quite knowledgeable of. And this is Greg Solomon saying I hope you enjoyed this video clip, and take care.